Let's discuss all of this with CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers and CNN senior political commentator Scott Jennings. Hello to you both. Bakari, I want to start with you. And I want to play something that Bill Maher told our colleague Alex Michelson about this year's Munich conference.
I feel like Munich has replaced Iowa as the first primary state. Because he's not the only one over there, right?
Yeah. Gretchen Whitmer's there, others are there as well.
I think AOC is there.
Yeah.
Well, the 2028 presidential election is well underway. I would like to have a strong Democratic candidate to get things back to a little bit of normal.
Is Newsom the strongest?
He is right now.
Bakari?
Well, I think he's right. I think that there are a lot of people who are doing whatever they can, whether or not it's Gavin Newsom or Ruben Gallego, or the list goes on and on and on, by trying to firm up those foreign policy credentials. For example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you don't necessarily think about her and foreign policy in the same sentence. And so she has to get out there and be on the stage and do those things necessary to kind of brandish those credentials. But at the end of the day, I can't tell you who is going to be the Democratic nominee for president of the United States. I can tell you that it's probably going to be a governor. It's probably going to be a governor with some track record of success. I want to make Scott really, really excited by saying one of those people could be Andy Beshear from the great state of Kentucky. So it's wide open. This isn't, I'm not about to crown Gavin Newsom because he came to South Carolina and hugged a couple of black women. He's going to have to do a lot more work in becoming more appetizing to the general public.
Do you want to take that bait, Scott?
I'm surprised to hear Bakari say it was going to be a governor and not Kamala Harris, who's currently leading the Democrats in the polls. And I know Bakari was such a big fan of Kamala in the 2024 election. She looks like she's coming back to me, which, by the way, would be an amazing outcome for the Republican Party. Look, this Munich Security Conference put on full blast the fact that we've only got one adult political party in the United States right now, and it's the Republican Party. Marco Rubio gave the speech of a lifetime over there. He laid out a clear foreign policy vision that defends Western values and Western civilization. And the brightest Democrat over there, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, crapped the bed, okay? She wants to be president, she wants to run, and she's one of the most popular Democrats and gave one of the most embarrassing performances you could possibly do. Gretchen Whitmer, one of the governors that Bakari is touting, said she knows even less about foreign policy than AOC, and Gavin Newsom has repeatedly embarrassed himself every time he's gone to one of these international conferences, whether it was Davos a few weeks ago or Munich. He can't even rebuild a single house in the Palisades in Los Angeles. In California, people are running out of there like crazy right now. The bottom line is this: these international conferences have been a disaster for Dems, and they have showed Republicans, in the name of Marco Rubio this time around, to be adults who have a clear-eyed view of what the United States has to do in the future.
Go ahead, Bakari.
No, I was going to say, if I may, I think that the bar, and many people know when it comes to foreign policy and individuals who can articulate complete sentences, is extremely low when you come to President Donald J. Trump. And I think what you're seeing, though, is people getting their footing. I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez getting her footing, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro. I mean, the people who we know are running for president of the United States, the list is long. We haven't even spoken about Mark Kelly, who is more than formidable. We haven't talked about Raphael Warnock, who is more than formidable. We haven't spoken about Pete Buttigieg, right? I mean, so the list is very, very long. And if Kamala Harris does get in the race, and that's her decision to make, then we can recalibrate and have that discussion. So I am not afraid. I don't think any Democrat, Bill Maher to Bakari Sellers, is afraid of Marco Rubio or J.D. Vance running for president of the United States. I think what we want to see, though, is just an all-out figurative brawl for the Democratic nomination, which is what we're seeing. And I love Scott Jennings, but Scott Jennings is not necessarily going to be determinative of the type of voter that will decide the primary. Instead, that's going to be my mama and her friends.
Bakari, we're all talking about potential future presidents, but let's talk about past presidents. Today is President's Day, and to celebrate that, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, put out a tweet showing recent Democratic presidents. You can see Kennedy, Obama, Biden, LBJ, Carter, even FDR. But there is a striking omission and that is President Bill Clinton. What's going on there?
Oh, that's crap. I mean, whoever designed that, I mean, Ken Martin, look, President Bill Clinton is somebody who actually brought this country together when we're talking about legislative accomplishments. He's the last president. And I know that Republicans cringe at this, but it's a fact. He's the last president to have a budget surplus. He created 22 million jobs. I mean, the unemployment rate was 4%. And he's going to hold himself to account for Jeffrey Epstein and whatever involvement he had in that. I'm looking forward to having him and Hillary Clinton testify. Hopefully that's done in public, unlike Donald Trump, who's mentioned second in the Epstein files, only to Epstein himself. And so I know that there's some hesitation and consternation, but Democrats, we need to understand and grow a backbone sometimes and be able to tell our story. Our story is inclusive of Bill Clinton with all the warts that may come from that. And the fact is, he was a president that people remember for his presidential success. And sometimes people remember him for his character lapses and moral failures as well. But you got to take the good with the bad. You got to look at a holistic picture. And so I think it's crap that he's left off. It's ahistorical, and you can't lie to people. We just can't erase him from history. We can't lie that he was a successful president, that he was about his success as president. We should go about telling that story.
Scott, I want to go back to something that you said before, because I've been thinking about it, of course, listening to every word that Bakari is saying. But you talked, Scott, about Marco Rubio, being the adult in the room. Are you saying that you think that he is somebody who the party should seriously consider over the sitting vice president?
No, as far as I know, Marco Rubio has said that he's supporting J.D. Vance if J.D. Vance runs for president. That's my expectation, is that the vice president will run. And if he wants to be the nominee, he will likely be the nominee. Rubio says he's for him. The president himself has said he thinks they would be a great ticket. And J.D. Vance tweeted out Marco Rubio's speech this weekend and said everybody needs to watch this. Look, I think between Vance and Rubio, you have two clear thinkers. And yes, they do approach, I think, their views and how they came to be Republican leaders in different ways. But they both have one thing in mind, and that's defending the future of Western civilization. And I think that's why they would work well together. But no, right now it is pretty obvious to me and most Republicans that J.D. Vance is highly likely to be the nominee in 28.
Okay, so you mentioned Western civilization. Let's just talk for 1 second about civilization. On a much, much lighter note, Bakari, former President Obama made some curious comments with regard to visitors from space. Watch this.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the President of the United States.
Now, those comments were picked up all over the world, and the former president had to issue a statement clarifying his position, saying statistically the universe is so vast that the odds are good there's life out there, and I saw no evidence during my presidency that extraterrestrials have made contact with us. Really? Bakari?
I don't know. I believe in the first answer. I'm going to go watch Independence Day, all 67 of them. Look, if there's been so much that happened in our political sphere over the past decade. I mean, aliens could be approaching us any day if they're not here already.
Do we have bipartisan
I trust Barack
consensus
Obama
on this?
I think they got to Barack Obama. I think he was trying to be honest, and then they got to him, and it was pretty sad. I wish he hadn't walked it back. He was trying to tell us the truth. He was trying to tell us something. They got to him pretty bad.
See? And people say everybody can't get along in Washington. We're proving them wrong right here. Come together on aliens. Good to see you both, Bakari and Scott. Thank you.